This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with coach developer Steve Lilley. He discusses his experiences of delivering qualifications for the FA, how he challenges coaches regarding their playing philosophy, and the new company he has created to support grassroots clubs and coaches. This podcast was also recorded over the internet, so may sound a little different to normal. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so Steve, first of all, thank you for jumping from one meeting into this next meeting, which I'm sure everyone's doing at the moment. I guess the first thing for you, how is everything? How's it being back kind of in the real world to a certain degree and us being allowed out and about? And yeah, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. It's been refreshing and nice to get out and about. I was actually found myself out on a pitch the other day as well, which was pleasing because I've not been on the pitch for a while. So yeah, touch wood, fingers crossed, all that. Hopefully things are beginning to get back to normal. But all's good.
Good. Obviously, kind of approached you off the back of a conversation with our mutual friend or whatnot, Lewis Burden, who suggested you'd be a really good person to talk to, just kind of with his experience with you. So for those people that haven't come across you before, do you just want to explain kind of your journey to where you are now, what you do, and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I won't go all the way back because it might take a while. But yeah, for the last 5 years, I've worked full-time for the FA as a county coach developer. So each county the FA employed one of us in each county across the country. I think there are 40 of us in total to oversee coach education and coach development, levels 1, 2 and Uefa B. Gloucestershire was my patch, my county, and with 3 cities, I guess, or you've got Cheltenham, Gloucester and Bristol, plus obviously the rural areas, Cotswolds, the Forest. It's quite a big area and certainly a good footballing area. So it was a great role for me. Lewis came on his level 2, as he certainly did his Uefa B. He was an outstanding learner, I must say. It was nice of him to recommend me to come along. But I've been doing that for 5 years. Due to budget cuts and the way the FA going, and we were made redundant in the summer. So I've started up a program to maybe just hopefully continue what I was doing because I quite liked it. So working with clubs, working with coaches, trying to help develop them in their coaching journeys.
So I guess if we touch on the FA stuff now, and then we can go on to your coaching company, because I know from the few things I've seen online and whatnot, it looks like quite an exciting project with quite a lot of good people involved. Did you see that was coming before this, or is this a reaction to COVID?
No, I think it was clear that probably this time next year the coach education was going to look a little bit different, or a lot different, if that makes sense. The world is changing, and the FA is a corporate organisation, and I think they felt they had to change with it, which is their prerogative. It's absolutely fine. I think COVID probably accelerated that process, and we find ourselves where we are. But I'm still very much open to tutor courses, whatever they may look like in the future. Level 2s and Uefa Bs. I've retained my licence, and I'll be keen to continue working for the FA. They're just going in a slightly different direction now.
So and this is a guess, I haven't read or heard anything. I'm assuming that more stuff's going online, because that seems like everything is going more online. Is that the case with them as well?
Yeah, that's right. So it's no secret. It's out there. There's a Playmaker app out already, which is for volunteers to go on. I've done it myself. It's fantastic. From April next year, so April 2021, the FA Level 1, which we all know and love, is going online, going digital. And then my understanding, it's not been confirmed, but my understanding is that the Level 2 will be called the Uefa C. And I believe it's a mixture of face-to-face and online learning as well. That's been rolled out in January 2022, so we've got a while to wait for that one, obviously to be designed and rolled out, I believe. But that's all I know. I don't know what's happened with the Uefa B. whether it's going to go back to a regional model, because up until now, the last few years, it's been run by counties. But again, I'm not aware of what's happening there.
I guess something that kind of interests me in terms of kind of seeing how the FA developed their coach education model and stuff was I did my B license probably going back 9 years ago now, maybe. And then speaking to people that have done them more recently, it seems like there was quite a shift in terms of the way the courses were delivered and the expectations of them. So if I go back to mine, it's probably more traditional. You would kind of turn up, deliver a couple of times on the course. You might do a little bit of work kind of away from it and whatnot. But it was more kind of how you delivered on that day to be whether you passed or failed. Whereas it seems like in more recent years, they went more towards a kind of journey of trying to get you through the course. And there was quite a lot of like supporting coursework that would go with it, where you'd have a portfolio of work and stuff. I guess my first question to you is that the case? Is my outside looking in, is that what it looked like?
Yeah,
and two, how was that for you to deliver that kind of transition?
Yeah, no, it's definitely the case. I never tutored the previous B license, but I took it, like yourself, I took it a few years ago. And I think back then it was a case of we had to deliver on course, I'm sure you agree, just to demonstrate that we understood it. So you'd stop it, you'd stop, you'd stand still, and you'd intervene and demonstrate to the tutor that we knew what we were talking about. And actually that was probably the way to go, because there was no in-situ support at the time. We were simply trying to demonstrate we understood the tactical and technical sides of the game. The way we've gone now, and it's still being rolled out, because we're starting a B licence in Gloucestershire in October half term. It's very bespoke to the learner. So in the room, you'll have learners who are working with different types of groups, female game, male game, adult game, 9v9, although not so much, 11v11, etc. You might have elite environments, like grassroots environments. So it was very much bespoke to the learner. And also we are fortunate enough to support them in situ. So we at least 3 visits to their own coaching environment. So we get to know them, we get to know their players, and they can kind of vary their interventions and their coaching styles based on the players in front of them. So I thought it was fantastic. I still think it's a fantastic course. It wasn't that horrible kind of final assessment. People would be given time to pass as and when they're ready. So yeah, it's a good course, which I hope they don't tamper with it too much, because I certainly, for one, think it's fit for purpose.
And then I guess for you guys going into that in situ environment, one of the things you said there is you get to know the person and the players a little bit better. Has there ever been examples of where you've gone to a person in situ and gone, actually, the way that they act is perfect for that environment, or I wasn't expecting to go there and see that how well they're able to adapt when they're with players that they know, or anything like that?
100%. And I had a conversation this morning actually about how sometimes it's so difficult to coach your peers if you're on course, and it's very stage managed, isn't it? We've all been there, and you're kind of coaching the peers and people that are older than you, and etc. To see a coach in their own environment with players they understand and know and have worked with for many years, it was a perfect environment. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised many a time. Similarly, I've had occasions where I've gone and I've been surprised, unpleasantly. But we soon sort that out. But no, it was a really good. I felt a really good experience for learners.
Have you got any examples of situations where you've turned up and just kind of blown away by what the coach does with those players?
For me, it's a massive balancing act, and we talk about this a lot on course. We give learners, we throw so much content at learners, and you've been there yourself as a learner on various courses. You're like sponges, aren't they? And you take on this information. And for me, the skill of a coach is to then know how much and which parts of that to give to their players. Because just because you know it all, it might not be the right time to impart it on their players. So for me, that was the delight I got when I saw coaches keeping it simple, maybe taking a message or two this week and then a message or two the week after, and not bombarding players with all this tech information. So there, for me, that was a real pleasing time when I visit people like that. Lewis was one. Lewis had a great group of young players, but he kept it simple for them. He didn't overcomplicate the game for them.
And do you have any strategies to help people with that? Because I imagine, sometimes you can say that to your blue in the face, but coaches at times can be very well intentioned. And I've been in this situation. You're very well intentioned, but you kind of get in your own way because you feel like everything needs to come out now to show that you're able to do what you want. Have you got any strategies for people that maybe are delivering practices or delivering design, and where they can actually go, well, yeah, maybe this week I'm going to work just in this area, and it's a journey for the players rather than a bombardment, if you like?
Yeah, I think the term we use is scaffolding, isn't it, in education, where you try and scaffold the learning. It's no different to footballers. That you can't go in with it all at once. You build it up gradually. Very often, I must say, it's probably not a well thought out strategy, but sometimes coaches have to fail. You can tell them what you want, but they have to fail themselves and then reflect themselves and think, that's too much. Sometimes it's the only way to do it. It's sometimes a lot more powerful. We've all been there, haven't we? We've all set a session up. Well, it's great on paper, and the players just don't understand it, don't grasp it. Okay, that's fine. I'll reflect on it. Why is that? Probably a little bit too complicated, too advanced. So a couple of strategies, but some good guys and girls on the courses. They're really open to feedback.
I guess that's quite an important side there, that feedback process, in terms of being able to review what they're doing, but also so they've got a certain level of self-reflection in terms of them being able to speak to you and go, yeah, this is what went wrong and this is what went right.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're aware, it's reflection is a part of the process we've been really hammering home to learners. I think it's a cultural thing. We love planning. As a community of coaches, we'll spend an hour planning a session, and we love the doing, but it's the reviewing that I think we get lazy with sometimes. And I wonder if we are just don't know how to review and how to reflect properly. I would say to the tutors that I work with, the aim here is by the end of the course, they shouldn't need us. They should be in a position to reflect on their own practice, offer peer feedback to each other, and we can almost sit back and observe. And when we get there, that's a really good feeling.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. How do you help them with that then? How do you help them to be able to reflect better? Because like you said, I don't know how long a course might last, if it was a B lessons course, for example, but imagine you're not getting extensive amount of contact time with them, because obviously they're going away and delivering, you're going to other courses and stuff. So how do you, going back to scaffolding, how do you scaffold so they're able to reflect better on practices?
Yeah, I mean, the B license, we're fortunate. It's a year or a season-long program, so you do have that. And when you're working with a learner over a season, although you only see them kind of four blocks and then 3 occasions in situ, there is that we've got a small cluster group we work with, 8 learners each as a tutor. So we have that almost like weekly, fortnightly contact. We might say, let me know how that went, and just write some reflection in there. Give us a ring about that. And we have more contact. It becomes harder when in the level 2, and we have less time, and we still do the in-situ support. That's where we're going to really scratch the surface in terms of reflection. But by the time they get to B license, I'd like to think that they really are reflecting on the practice. So again, I suppose that's an example of scaffolding. Is if a learner has a journey where they go on to level 1, we touch on it, reflection. We build it up gradually, level 2, and then come B license, and then presumably A license. They're au fait with it.
One question I have is, you mentioned there how many different people and different areas you have on those types of courses. So how do you differentiate between learners in terms of what you're supporting them with, and how do you go about kind of catering either your feedback or their sessions, or to a degree their reflection? Because the example could be, I could go and reflect by using performance analysis if I've got it, and that might be really easy for me. Whereas if you go to someone who's working with a grassroots team and doesn't have a camera, they can't do that. So how do you go about differentiating between your learners to be able to help them get the feedback that they need?
That's a good question, yeah, and you're right. You've spot on. That is exactly what we come across. I think it's two parts to the answer. I guess the first part is we're really fortunate that we have a syllabus that we have to deliver, but we're given a license as tutors to make it bespoke to learners. So I'll give an example. After block 1 of the Uefa B, they will all the learners will have an in-situ support visit by one of the tutors. We will feed back then as tutors into a Google Doc, and then we'll see patterns emerging. So, needs to work on this, needs to work on that, excellent technical knowledge, etc. And we'll start building this profile of learners, and we can then actually group them in block 2 as to what they need. So it might be that one of the tutors takes 7 or 8 of them away for practice design. I might take a group around reflection, so we can start, differentiating within the course. So that's the first part of the answer, and that worked really, really well. And secondly, I think it's really important that learners are able to, the project work, for example, that some people do outstanding projects in terms of their IT skills, because it might be that they're maybe a younger learner or their job involves IT. Others are more comfortable on the grass, and so they might not produce a glossy project. But as long as we can see that they've taken the content in and have evidenced it, it's really up to them how they do that. As long as they take pride in it, which they all did. So,
have you seen any unique ways of presenting that dossier or that project?
Yeah, we had a level 2 learner who's clearly very good with IT, who kind of almost did a video diary, which was great because, as a tutor, it can get a little bit tedious. A school teacher marking all the projects, but the video diary was fantastic. One guy used the time in his car after sessions to reflect, so did audio, which is absolutely fine. So literally driving home, reflecting immediately after the session, recorded all those. We had a guy on a Uefa B who, in his own words, went old school and stood at the front with flip chart and just took us through his journey, and it's fantastic. It's that differentiation is fantastic. It really is.
And did it challenge any of your beliefs when you were getting those different type of feedback? Was there anything that you thought, actually, I would steal that if I was going to do sort of presentation?
All I do is steal stuff. It's all I do is steal ideas. You learn something every day. I was doing a level 2 down in Dorset on Saturday, and I said at the end to the tutor I was working with, it's just like, I learned something every time. I'm not a bloody tutor, but I learned something every time. I think it's sharing good practice, pinching ideas off other tutors, off learners, and seeing what fits, really. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
So what's the best bit that you've stolen from a learner?
Wow, that's a question. Oh, blimey. I might have to come back on that. You put me on the spot there. I will have to think about that one. Let me ponder that as you ask me other questions.
Okay, so obviously with the FA and stuff, like you said, there's a kind of syllabus you have to work through and stuff, which I guess work around the principles of the game.
Yes.
I guess where these have been put into place and it's kind of become more common knowledge, have you seen improvement at grassroots level with teams demonstrating those principles of the game, etc.?
I have. I definitely have. When the new qualifications were all revamped, or whatever the word is, probably 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I think at the time when we were put into our positions, the principles of play came in at level 1. And they never did previously. The principles of play came in at level 2 for them. But we just felt as a governing body that principles of play of the game, it's the principles of invasion games, where it all starts. So one of the first things we talked to learners about on the day one of a level 1 were the principles of play, and they would kind of be revisited in every single workshop. We then talked to them about how the FA themselves interpreted those principles, so the England DNA model. So these are the principles, but clubs can interpret them in different ways. England had a model whereby in possession, They look to counter upon winning the ball back if possible. But if they weren't able to, if it wasn't the right time, then they would retain and build. They would progress and penetrate, and then create and score. So a simple in possession model, and a similar one for out of possession. But what we would then do is challenge, once they got a grasp of that, we challenge learners throughout the qualifications to come up with their own philosophy of play for their players. So actually, do they want to be a bit more direct? Do they want to play out from the back? Do they want to play through the thirds? Without the ball, do they want to win the ball back earlier? Do they want to sit off? And that might change from game to game. It might change season to season, group to group. But it just got people thinking about the game a bit more. And I genuinely see that now. I'm now a football parent as well. So my lad plays under-9s football. And I could see from the other side of the pitch, coaches giving things thought. Not overdoing it, not overcomplicating it, but certainly giving the game some thought and helping the players within that. So I think this, I will say this, I'm biased, I think the standard of coaching has improved massively because of these new qualifications, yeah.
So here's I guess a question which it would be interesting to hear your response. Obviously, at professional academies, they all have philosophies of play or principles of play, which they have, some of which are going to clash, I guess, with the England DNA. They want to do it. I'd imagine you probably have learners who equally are going to come up with philosophies or principles that will clash with the England DNA. How do you go about finding common ground with people when you're discussing that? And I guess how much of it is them just being happy with what they have or what they want, but you can challenge it in a constructive way, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'd like to think that we have never, as a team of tutors, knocked down any ideas about philosophy. We haven't had many different ones. I think people trust the FA and go and kind of copy the England DNA. But if learners come on the course, and if a learner wants to play a more direct style of football, providing they've got a rationale behind that, and providing all their work is geared around that and it's joined up, it's not for us, it's not for me to say. I mean, I worked with a ladies team, a Gloucestershire County ladies team a few years ago for about 3 years, and the make no secret of it, our philosophy in possession was to get the ball into the final third as early as possible. And the reason being, we had 3 very, very quick strikers, and it worked for us. We were successful. Now, that was one way of playing. If you give me another group, I might have a different philosophy of play. So for me, it's personal to the group you're working with. So yeah, going back to your question, it was never our job to preach. As providing people had a rationale behind their thinking, it's absolutely fine. What you'd find was the other learners, the fellow learners, were the ones that would be prodding away and questioning and not playing the right way and this, that, and the other. And it was quite fascinating to sit back and listen to some of the debates. But it's England DNA is one way of doing it, and there are other ways.
Do you think that because everyone kind of matches England DNA, or everyone watches your Man City's, Barcelona's and stuff, where they want to play and pass and pass and pass and press, that in a way we've become stale in terms of everyone doing the same thing all the time and constantly getting that rather than seeing anything else?
I personally do think that. This is just me, my own personal opinion. It's not, the opinion of the governing body or anything like that. I was brought up, I guess, my footballing education to three ways to beat a block. If you're in possession, there's 3 ways to beat a block. The first way is probably over it. So if there's an opportunity to go over the block, it's the easiest and most direct route. If you can't go over the block, then you probably try and go through it. That's quite direct. But if you can't go through it, you go around it. And wherever the ball is on the pitch and you're in possession, that block will look different. It might be able to shift it and switch play in order to move the block around. But I see a lot now, teams of all levels playing out from the back through the third at every opportunity. And I just feel we're losing sight a little bit of the principles of play. So for me, you've got to create and exploit space in football. So if there's spaces in behind the back line and you've got the ability to put the ball in behind the back line, for me, that's obvious. Because if you do that a couple of times, the opposition's block will drop, which will enable us to play out from the back. So I think we've probably lost that game of chess type outlook of football. But again, it's just my opinion. I personally find some of the football I watch on TV a little bit slow and draining, and I quite like the way teams attack quickly. I like the fact they're more direct. I think a variety is key of football, certainly.
Would you challenge learners on that? So if they kind of just went, I'm basically going to go down, play through the thirds, pressing high thing, would you challenge them to think about why they're doing that?
Yeah, if anyone's been on course with me will know that I'm probably, my skill set is playing devil's advocate. It's what I do. I don't preach. I just nudge. I throw hand grenades into discussions. I challenge. I get people to. My job's to get people wrestling with their own ideas, and I've probably become quite good at it over the years. But my personal opinion, it matter really, is it? It's my personal footballing opinion, but I think it's good that people have got their own thoughts and opinions around the game.
So how would you challenge them on it?
I think one thing that's come up a lot is when we ask people to design practices around their playing philosophy, design a practice to play out from the back. Well, then I think it's important then that we set an opposition up to challenge that, because we can all set up a scenario in training where you play out from the back, the opposition drops off, they let you play out. Match day comes and they lock onto your players, they lock onto your centre backs. Not so much now with the new rule change, but lock onto your fullbacks and lock onto your centre midfielders. And all of a sudden the opposition are not letting you do what you did in training. So I think on course, a lot of the time we have set up little scenarios. All right, you want to play at the back, we're going to do this. So you can't play at the back, so what are you going to do? And then it's it's kind of preparing them for match day, because that'll happen. That'll happen. I was talking to someone this morning in a meeting. We were saying like they like to press from the front, like set a trap. But the trouble is, he said, the opposition very often just kick it long, so we can't press from the front. Well, yeah, that's the rules. That's within the laws of the game. That's no problem. So football's never that simple, is it? Unfortunately, there's always an opposition trying to stop you doing what you want to do. Gone off on a tangent there, haven't I, Michael?
No, that's good. I like it. I think I agree with you. I think there is always an opposition trying to stop you do and trying to work their way. I guess a question I'd have, and this is just a personal thing, what are your thoughts on the retreat rule?
Right, the retreat. Right, okay. I've got some thoughts and I've got the answer, but nobody's ever listened to me. So my opinion is that when children start playing football at under sevens, it's fantastic, and I think under eights. I think at under nines, one player should be allowed to stay in the half. I think at under 10s, two players should be allowed to stay in the half. And then I can't even remember off the top of my head when it gets removed, maybe under 11s. But I think it should be a gradual thing. I think it should be, almost partial, non-opposed, partially opposed. Because when you take the retreat line away, it's almost alien to them, isn't it? All of a sudden you're being marked. So I think that should come in. I don't say why it can't come in. The other problem I have is sometimes it's interpreted incorrectly. So a goalkeeper will save the ball, catch the ball, and then everybody just waits for the opposition to retreat. Well, it was never intended to be that way. It's from set pieces, from spot kicks, isn't it? So the goalkeeper should have the opportunity then to maybe break long, whatever's best. And I think they need to learn from an early age that is an option, to not to let everybody get back into shape. So there's two things. Is it being interpreted correctly, i.e. only from goal kicks? And secondly, I think there should be more gradual introduction to pressing. So if you can picture an under nines match and one striker is allowed to stay in the opposition's half, well, it gives them a problem to solve, but not a massive problem, does it? You've still got spare players. So that's my idea.
So why do you think it's so beneficial at under sevens and eights?
Because I think if they didn't have it, I think the goalkeeper would roll or play out to players. The ball would be nicked off the toe and they would concede lots and lots of goals. So then they'd probably resort to just whacking up the pitch anyway. I'm not sure players understand how to create space at 6, 7, 8. And why should they? So I think it's almost like a a support mechanism, isn't it? It's like a rubber ring, just helping out a little bit. Again, my personal opinion.
See, my only issue with it is, and again, I haven't seen extensive amount of grassroots football. I have to pretense this. I've seen my brother play when he was younger and do it, and I almost felt like they would pass to the defender, and then the Alamo comes,
Yeah, yeah,
and then it goes.
yeah.
If you know what I mean. And so I was seeing it there, and for me, when I was there on the day, I was like, this seems madness, because all we're doing is gaining 7 yards then do the same outcome.
I agree. I think that's not so much the law or the rule. I think that's where we as coaches and adults have to be sensible and try and get the kids to interpret the rule correctly. So not having 5 outfield players, 6 outfield players charging at the ball. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen because they see it as a real good opportunity to win the ball high at the pitch and score. But I think done properly, it's a good rule with sensible people on the sideline. I think it's a good support mechanism for them. But I see where you're coming from.
I kind of like your idea of maybe setting them problems in terms of having 1 or 2 in there, because then all of a sudden, if you're adding in maybe a striker, then the goalkeeper's got a decision: where am I going to play? Where am I trying to find space to get the ball away from him?
But similarly, actually, you can start working with young players on pressing. So, like you said, at the moment, it's not really pressing. It's like the Dutch pressing of 1974, was it, when they just charge? But if you've got a forward, you can even start talking to them about cutting off to one side of the pitch. It's a simple instruction. So can you actually encourage the ball to go one side? And then obviously the players behind him can react accordingly. So I think there's a bit of learning that could be done with that gradual introduction of players, both in and out of possession.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's probably ways could be implemented. And like you said, that I do like your point in terms of it allows them to try and have some sort of composure on the ball, because obviously when everyone was just standing next to one another, it does cause issues. I guess it's just how we frame that to do it in a constructive manner. One question, kind of linking to a couple of points you said, and linking back to a podcast I did a little while ago with guys from Magic Academy, so Russell Earnshaw and John Fletcher.
Okay.
And Russell Earnshaw mentioned that at times he sees some unhelpful behaviour on the touchline. And as a coach educator, he finds that challenging, because he says you're not making it enjoyable for the kids. You're not necessarily getting principles out, all that type of stuff. I guess my question to you, you've mentioned you're a dad and you've got a son who is playing football. You're also a fan of football, because otherwise why would you work in it? And you're obviously also a coach educator and a coach. Do you see those unhelpful behaviours? And if you do you try and challenge individuals regarding that or not?
So far, as a parent, I've been very lucky. The guys who coach my son's team are fantastic, I have to say. They're absolutely fantastic. They didn't do the course with me either. They didn't do the level 1 with me. It was in Somerset. So I'm not just saying that. Their manner is just fantastic. Parents are fantastic. The teams we've played against, on the whole, have been pretty good. However, in my years of doing in-situ support visits and being around the grassroots scene, I see lots of, was it unhelpful? Unhelpful behaviour. I think there's the obvious unhelpful behaviour, which is just buggery and stupidity on the sideline, where screaming and shouting at children. There's that. That's obvious. We can all tell that there's no place for it. But some of the behaviours I find are carried out with the best intentions. So mums and dads will tell players what to do before they've done it. They think they're helping. Well, actually, they're hindering, aren't they? They're completely hindering. And I do a little bit of a role play on course, which I won't do now, where I'm put myself in the shoes of a 7-year-old footballer who's got all these things going through their mind as the ball is rolled out to them or past them. He's trying decision-making processes. Okay, where's the ball coming from? Where do I want it to go? Which foot am I going to control it with? Is there a player pressing me? How much time have I got? where are my mates, all this. And then we have adults trying to help by shouting to tell him what to do with it or her what to do with it. And I just think that kills kids. And in the end, they just whack it because they don't want the ball anywhere near them. So although I'm not an advocate of silent Saturdays or whatever they do sometimes, I'm not an advocate of that. I think mums and dads and grandparents should praise and clap and congratulate and put their thumbs up after things have happened. I don't think there should be any information before things happen, because it takes all decision making away from players.
And would you challenge people if you saw them doing that?
In my role as a parent or a coach educator?
I guess both, because I guess for you it is a double-edged sword to a certain degree.
As a coach educator, I would. As a parent, I would have to do it very subtly. I try and stay out of the way. I always turn up in my civvies, and I would choose my moment to do it. I would address the behaviour I was talking to you about before, which is the thuggery and the shouting. I would address that if I felt it was over the line, if they'd gone over the top. But in terms of the other stuff, I'd probably have to bide my time a little bit and choose my right moment.
I think in the podcast I did with those guys, Russell said that invariably he'll just go and have a chat with the person. And he said, so if any of you are listening and all of a sudden you see me come and talk to you, you can probably suggest that you're being unhelpful. Yeah. But I think, like you said there, a lot of it is well-intentioned and is trying to support the kid, but actually at times you're hindering them because you're adding an extra 2 or 3 layers into what's already a very complex situation. And I guess the other thing that's challenging as well is you don't know what the coach is asking them to do. And I guess you'll see this a lot in terms of working with a coach and thing. They might specifically ask the child, every time possible, can you receive on your non-dominant foot?
Yeah.
And they might lose it 4 out of 5 times, and you've got a parent on the sideline going like, come on, whereas he's doing the task he's been set to try and develop. So I guess it's that minefield of not entirely
absolutely
sure what.
It's funny because we started to on course encourage on level 1 we do the final workshop of the level 1, which is no longer the level 1, but was linking practice to competition. So actually, not just taking training sessions and match days in isolation, but linking what you do on a training morning or night to the game at the weekend, and talks about measures of success. So of course the score will always be one measure of success. However, have you got others? So we're working on playing out from the goalkeeper, and we're going to work on it, and we're also going to work on it on match day as well. So we're going to measure how successful we were. So every break, you have the thirds, don't they, or the halves, every team talk, every bit of praise will be around playing out from the back. And one thing we said to learners, and bearing in mind it's level 1, so it's their first experience of learning in terms of coach education, we encourage them to do their team talks in front of parents. And the look that they gave us, absolutely not. But so if you're brave enough to do that, it'll help you long term, because of what you've just said, Michael, is that they'll then know what you're asking them to do. So then if they roll the ball out from the back and they try something, the mums and dads can applaud that effort. They can applaud the fact that they're trying to do what they've been asked. But yeah, the messages are very mixed, and that, I know that doesn't happen. And I've never seen it, a team talk in front of parents. But I think it could help everybody. I really do.
I wonder, on that, it's quite a good way of doing it, whether you almost put a board on the parent side of the pitch.
Great idea.
If you don't want to do the thing, just get a board. We all have chalkboards around the house or whatever, or whiteboards, and just write, today the focus will be this. And you might then help frame the parents to look for that, and so if they can work to applaud that, then that would be ideal.
Earlier you said about nicking stuff off learners. Well, I've just nicked that one off you, and I'm going to make out it was my idea. No, I think you're right. And listen, let's face it, everyone's got a WhatsApp group for parents now, haven't they, for football? So even in the WhatsApp group on the morning of the game, I all just to let you know this is what we're working on. Yeah, there must be a way, like you say, if you're not confident to do that talk in front of parents, yeah, there must be a visual way. So great shout.
I guess for you, one thing you're seeing with your son playing as well is obviously his enjoyment of football, but obviously his development in turn trying to learn skills and all that type of stuff. I guess with someone who very well educated in terms of processes and scaffolding for children and stuff, it would be really interesting to hear your insight. So when he's finished a game or he's finished a training session or whatnot, and he comes over to you, what's the process to then him kind of getting home to have dinner or getting home to have lunch or what does that look like for someone who's obviously quite well educated in that process?
Me, well educated.
Well, I'm
I
being
know what you mean.
nice.
It's a really interesting question. From the moment he was born, I thought, right, if he starts to play football, I will not get involved. And I think I've stuck to that. I play football with him a lot. He wants me to. When we go to the field, we do what he wants to do. Usually it's me in goal, getting balls whacked at me. After matches, it's fascinating because because I've preached it for so long. The first thing he says, "You enjoy that, mate?" I do praise how hard he works. I probably go over the top on that. I praise he worked so hard today, and I talk about that a lot. But I've never offered him any advice, and this is God's honest truth, unless he's asked for it. And there was a time last year, and he said, "Well, why don't you coach me like you did such and such?" He knows I've worked with some players in the past, and they're his heroes now. And I said, "Well, you haven't asked me." So now he'll ask me, "What did I do well today?" I'll tell him. What didn't I do well? And it's almost like he's been on a level 1 course himself, what went well, what didn't. So he's got this, it's come from within where he's kind of intrigued by the game, and he'll ask me, not all the time, but he'll ask me for a bit of feedback. But not once have I offered advice without him asking him for it. I think it's my place to do so.
So it's interesting that he's obviously got to a stage where he wants to know your opinion. How do you think he ended up getting to that? How do you think he ended up getting to the stage where he's like, actually, I want to know what you think? Or what?
I think because he knows I work in the game. He knows that I've worked and coached players, and I think he's probably puzzled a bit, like why isn't he imparting all this information to me? And so I think he probably worked out in his mind that to get it, he needs to ask for it, and he needs to come to me. And I'm more than happy that I won't go over the top with feedback, but there'll be tiny bits, and I'll always praise, like I said, the effort. Yeah, it's an interesting one for someone so young, 27, to sit in the car and say, "What did you think I did well, and what did you think I didn't do well?"
So on the situations where he doesn't do that, what does he do?
Just doesn't talk about it, or just says, "Can we play football when we get home?" Genuinely. I mean, I think he might leave it for 2 days. So he played. This come about my son. I don't want to talk about my son too much, bore everybody. But he played a couple of Sundays ago, and it was one of those games with it just passed him by. Bless him. It happens, doesn't it? It's no problem. And he came out and he didn't say a word. And then 2 days later, he brought it up, and we go and practice such and such. I didn't think I played well on Sunday. Of course you can, mate. I think I'll be careful not to shove feedback into anybody's face too early. It's that reflection, even for a 7-year-old, to reflect on their own game. And it's the same with learners as well, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting. I said to a group at the weekend, he's my little case study. He's not the reason I had him, but he is my little case study. And I've probably learned so much in the 2 years he's been playing football about children and development and this, that, and the other.
Is there anything that seeing his development up close challenged the way you coach kids?
Oh, blimey. I haven't coached that age group for a long time, so I haven't really reflected on that. Off the top of my head, no. I guess my biggest reflection is I'm just pleased that I'm able to practice what I preach. You know, it's all right standing in the classroom and saying, yeah, don't get emotionally involved, and it's only a game, and this. I'm fortunate I can step away. I can watch him lose 6-1 and just think, do you know what? It's football. It's great. He's happy. He's forgotten about it 2 minutes later. So I'm just pleased I'm not that person who can't practice what they preach.
I guess the last question on this, and we'll move on to some other topics. How important do you think it is to expose competition to kids at the younger ages? So I know a lot of it is we work off a friendly basis, and then kind of towards the end of the season, you have your tournaments and all that type of stuff. Do you think we've got the current balance right in terms of non-competitive, competitive? Do you think it should be more one way or completely one way?
From what I can see, I watched under-9s football, I watched under-8s football last year. And at that age, they work their socks off. I almost want to bottle it up, and I don't want them to get older because they all just work their socks off. They're all competitive. I honestly don't think they need labels like it's a cup match, it's a league match, it's this, it's that. They just want to enjoy the game and run around. And I strongly believe that they're naturally competitive anyway, kids. Some more competitive than others, but that's their nature. I don't think we need that stuff. And I think, now I've seen it firsthand, I think the decision to take away league tables, I think it was a good one. Because I think the adults are the ones that get carried away with all that. I genuinely do. I had a really, really good conversation with my son's manager on Sunday, 2 matches, and the second one, he won't mind me saying, the second one they lost heavily, and he was really, really upset because he felt he'd let the lads down, because if they'd have not lost by a certain number of goals, they would have got to a cup final. Quite honestly, none of the lads knew that. They weren't bothered about cup finals. They're still 7 and 8. They're not at that stage yet. And I defy anyone to say any differently. So that said, I don't know about 9, 10-year-olds. I don't know enough about them as to when that changes. I certainly think that when they get to high school, 11, I think the world changes a little bit, and they're accountable for their own performances. They probably need that element of competition. But at mini soccer age, foundation phase, for me, it's spot on.
Yeah, I think what's interesting from my perspective, I agree with you. I think the introduction of friendlies and scrapping league tables and stuff was really, really good. I think one thing I have seen with my group and a few of my groups with the introduction of competitive tournaments or whatnot is they've actually learned to manage their emotions better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas it started off, whenever we play in a tournament, it was the World Cup final. You know, everyone will get worked up, and the type of tournaments that we play, you would play 5 or 6 games over a day, and it was kind of a running thing over 6 or 7 days at different points in the season.
Yeah.
And if they lost the first game, that's almost then done for the rest of the day, because they can't get over the fact that they've lost that game. You know, the thing. Yeah. Whereas after a few goes at it, a few different days, few different tournaments, they learnt that almost emotional stability a little bit better. Yeah. They realised, okay, that 20 minutes is gone. There's nothing I can do about that. So what can I control? Well, I can focus on the next 20 minutes, which is happening in 5 minutes' time, by the way. And so I think my personal opinion is, I think the introduction of competitive football at different points skillfully actually has real benefits at the younger age groups, just to help them with that emotional stability of realizing, okay, you've lost a game of football, you don't get too low. Okay, you've won a game of football, don't get too high, try and stay on an even keel. I don't know what your thoughts would be on that. I know that's not a first-hand experience for you, but
I think you're right. I agree. I can only go by what I've seen. I think they still have they know if they've won or lost, even if the result's not recorded, they know what the score is. Kids aren't stupid, are they? So I think they have those emotions anyway. But I agree. I think as they get older, they need to be exposed to competition. They need to learn how to control emotions. I agree with you. I don't know what it looks like now, but I think at one point the academy system, certainly for the youth development phase, I thought that got a little bit soft. And you're talking about kids here who are a year or two off potentially getting a scholarship. For me, that's you need to learn to win. Like, you need to play the game properly, but you need to, like you say, want and learn to win. Because otherwise they'll get a bloody shock when they start playing in the youth team or hopefully as a pro. You can't just turn it on and off like a switch. So it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a big talking point, but I think we've got it right at the moment in terms of grassroots football, certainly. Sorry, Michael. One other thing I found crept into coaching a few years back, I don't see it as much now, is as adults, I don't think we should be saying too much. It doesn't matter if you lose. It doesn't matter if you lose. I don't think we should say that. You're almost then taking the competitive nature away. I just don't think we need to say anything. The game's there. Try and win it.
That's interesting, because I'll be honest, I use that phrase.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, I say I'm not worried about the result. I'm worried about the performance. Is a phrase that I use, because I just say I want you to compete. And try and do the things that we've been working on. If you try and do those and you lose 13-0, that's fine. I'd rather that than you just not do any of the things we've worked on and win 13-0. But it's quite an interesting thought for you to say that. We don't need to address that.
Yeah, it's personal. I just don't think I'd address it, and I don't think I'd address it like that. But it's personal. I don't think we should encourage kids to not try and win. You know, they got to try and win. Well, got to try and win. You ain't going to win them all, but you got to try and win. But again, horses for courses, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. My big one is be competitive. That's probably the phrase I say most over an entire season, is be competitive. You know, the old phrase of the bigger they are, the harder they fall for your little ones and stuff.
Yeah.
I think a big thing for me, if you can maintain that competitiveness in everything you do, we'll be okay. It doesn't matter if you do lose, okay. If you do win, okay. But if you're competitive, then that will hold you in good stead moving forward. And I think academy football has hit a bit of a turning point in terms of not being so. They have Premier League qualifiers and all that type of stuff now, which is great. I've experienced firsthand going abroad for tournaments with my lads. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I think going to those types of tournaments where, you know, we've been fortunate, we've gone and there's been Anderlecht and
brilliant.
You know, PSV and all that type of stuff, and not necessarily those teams, but when we've been out of the continent, it is to win.
Yeah, that's good.
You go out there and they want to win, and you know they have crowds there, and some of the the Eastern Bloc countries will come and they'll have scarves and all that type of stuff. And I've always said I find it interesting with our lads. The first couple of games, they're looking around going, "What is
this?" Yeah.
But again, it's something that they over time try and improve on. And I always think, it's a constant discussion point with a lot of people I speak to in academies, is how can we prepare them for that? How can you prepare the kids for that environment where, you know, people might have flares that are waving around, or chants or drums? How can we in this country, while sticking to our principles, prepare them for that? It's still a work in progress, I'd say.
Yeah. But great that they're getting those experiences. I mean, brilliant experience. We did many moons ago. I worked at Peterborough United in the academy system, and we tried to expose our players to as many different environments, scenarios, playing styles as possible. And we took them away a lot to Scandinavian countries, to Ireland, Germany, just because we felt it was key for their development. So it sounds like you're doing the same. I think it's so important.
I guess we'll move on to kind of what your projects are now, because I know that it's pretty exciting what you're doing, and kind of off the back of that. So do you want to explain kind of what your project is at the moment, what your role is, how that's looking, and kind of what's going through? Because from what I've seen, as I said, it looks like a really exciting project.
Yeah. So I formed a company called Ecan. So the CAN is Coaching Advisory Network. And we're going to, hopefully, the next few years, roll out a few programs. But the first one we're really looking to develop is called passNsupport. So it's looking at how coach education's going now. I think there's going to be a little bit of a void for grassroots coaches in terms of face-to-face support. So I know the mentoring program has had to be scrapped. presumably due to finances. So we're just approaching clubs and their coaches to see if we can support them on the grass. You know, is there a budget? That was obviously the first question, because I think clubs would be keen for it, but could they afford it? It seems that clubs have budgets depending on how big or small the club is, and really just like I say, fill in the void and getting some of these fantastic affiliate tutors who are going to be left with very little work now, getting them out there working with coaches still, maybe some of the mentors. You know, got some brilliant people who are doing a fantastic job. I just felt it'd be silly not to get them involved and get them working around the county, but it's now around the region and potentially around the country. So that's our role. We want to continue supporting grassroots coaches as much as we can.
And so what does that look like in terms of, obviously, not necessarily working towards a syllabus and stuff like you would have done before? So what does that look like in practice or in situ for those?
Yeah, so it's very bespoke and can be tailored to what the club needs or the coaches need. So we've got a menu of events or workshops, rolling out club philosophy, working in cluster groups, taking guest sessions. There's about 10 options on the site. Ultimately, it's what the club need and want, and sometimes the club don't know what they want or need. So that's where we come in and help them decide that. I mean, a lot of clubs, some of the JPL clubs we're working with, they've opted on almost like a monthly retainer basis. So we'll go in X number of hours a month, and month by month we'll decide between us who needs support and what that support looks like, really. So a learner might be on their Uefa B, and in which case we can give them additional support as well as their in situ. They might have done a playmaker and want to bring that to life practically. So wherever they are on their coaching journey and their qualification journey, we'll look to try and support them.
And in terms of people that obviously you've got working with you in this, obviously you mentioned you've got a lot of FA or ex-FA affiliate tutors, etc. Have you got anyone? Well, do you want to go through some of those names that kind of got working?
Yeah. I mean, so initially it was as my role as CCD at Gloucestershire. It was conversations with Nigel Quincy, who's been around a long time and is very much my mentor and my sounding board. He's still keen to keep involved. I won't let him retire yet. So he's up in Gloucester. Gary McLean, who was a mentor and a tutor, so has had a pretty hefty pay cut, really, because he was reliant on that income from the two programs. So we've got him out working. Chris Gooch, a licensed coach, fantastic guy. Shane Duff, ex-professional footballer for Cheltenham Town. He's also a B licensed tutor, so he's on board. I've got to go through all of them. I'll forget someone if I'm not careful. Scott Murray. What started as a Gloucestershire thing, then dipped into Somerset, but now we're looking to roll the programme out in Devon, Dorset, Cornwall, Wiltshire, Oxfordshire. So we're kind of hitting the whole of the south of the country, and potentially East Anglia as well. A colleague of mine who will remain nameless at this point. We're talking about potentially rolling it out over there. It seems there's a market. It seems that the grassroots game and coaches within it need support and want support.
I guess one of the upsides to doing it with the model that you are as well is that you can have continuity in terms of when you see people and who you see. Because I think one of the big things about having a relationship where you can be honest with someone is developing that relationship to begin with, and it can be hard on courses or whatnot to develop that relationship when you're seeing them infrequently. But like the JPL clubs, like you said there, if you're getting to see them once a month, you can develop those things. You can have a cup of tea and talk over football and stuff, which we know is one of the most invaluable ways to develop those type of relationships.
Yeah, it's spot on. And I was part of the pilot program for the FA mentoring program, which I want to say was, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, possibly. I had 4 clubs, a couple of clubs over your way, actually, Derry Hill and Royal Wootton Bassett, and then Longwell Green and Bocco over here, I forgot them. And what we were told at the start of that mentoring program was building rapport. That's the most important thing, and like you said, it takes time to build rapport and to build trust. As much as even on level 2s, as much as we would say we're coming to do an in situ support visit, the question would always be, when are you going to come and assess me? They never got away from that, learners. So no, building rapport is massive, and like you said, we can work with the club over a season or beyond. I think that's really important in what we do. Yeah.
And how do you think that this will develop long term? Obviously, you've mentioned kind of the scaling up in terms of possibly stretching out. You mentioned in terms of possibly doing workshops and stuff. How do you see this hopefully progressing moving forward?
Hopefully, I don't want to create a monster I can't control. But at the same time, if there are available tutors in certain areas who I feel will be the right fit, and that's important for the programme, then I think I will try and roll it out. And then it's a case of demand, really. I guess if we find that, a guy in Oxfordshire is covering Oxfordshire and he says, look, my diary's full, my timetable's full, but we've got clubs still asking for support, then it can only grow, I guess. But we need to find the right people to be a part of it. As I mentioned about other programs and other that we want to roll out, I'm looking at an online platform as well in terms of session design and session practices. But that's something that will have to be parked until the new year now, because it's quite busy with the passNsupport. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, have you started actually delivering in situ stuff? Have you started going into clubs and whatnot?
Yeah.
And how's that been?
Yeah, it's great. It's been great. I mean, we launched on the 1st of October. What is it now? 13th. So I've personally been out 3 or 4 times already. My diary is full. So my job now is to try and make sure the coach developers, as we're labeling them, that their diaries get full as well. So I'm supporting. I've been out Saturday mornings. I was out in the rain. I'm still delivering courses as well, delivered for Dorset F.A. So it's just, for me, after 4 months in lockdown and then being told I was on gardening leave, I was climbing the walls. I'm personally, probably like yourself, at my most comfortable on a football pitch. Not playing, but certainly supporting coaches and being with coaches. So yeah, I'm back in a good place again.
And how do you think it will develop you as a person or a coach developer? How do you think, I guess, this process is going to help you or challenge you?
I need to be. It's going to challenge me in terms of being a businessman, because it's now my business, it's my company, and if it was up to me, I'll come and work with your players on Saturday morning, and it was part of my role before, and my diary was full, and I loved it. I now need to be more cute and a bit more of a business mind about it. That's probably the biggest challenge, because I'm sure you'll agree as well. I've never really worked. I wake up every morning. I don't see it as a job, because I just love what I do. So not once have I woke up thought I've got to go work. I just love it. So, but I've got to make sure it pays for me and for the other guys as well. So it's managing that, I guess. It's marrying the two up.
And I guess one of the things you mentioned there about kind of having the other guys around you that you know really well and being sounding boards and stuff is the ability to challenge one another. Because not everyone has the same philosophies on football or the same ways to do stuff. So how do you find, or how are you going to find, working with a group of people who and obviously respect, but also you're going to look to challenge one another about beliefs and stuff? How do you think that's going to help you or develop you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Firstly, it's an interesting point that when I first approached tutors, so affiliate tutors who I knew would have very little work now because of what's happened, I was quick to say, look, I know you can do this on your own. I know you don't need me. I know you could wander down to your local clubs that you've been supporting learners from, and you can get some cash in hand and something else. They were all very keen to be part of something. They were keen to be part of a team. And now I don't even mention it, because it's obvious that people want to be part of a team, so they can bounce ideas off each other. So there'll be a network of coach developers. I guess for me then, recruitment is key. So I know all the coach developers and tutors around here, but it was reaching out to people that I trust in the organisation to recommend people. And that's where I've got to so far with certain individuals in other counties. I've gone by recommendations from people I trust. The other way of doing it would have been to get hold of every single email address for every single mentor and tutor in the south of England. Said, right, who wants to do this? But I think you could easily lose control in terms of quality assurance. So recruitment for me is key, getting the right people involved, the right people on board, and then, like I say, just working with them from them.
And will it be something that you'll try and kind of upskill them at the same time, or is that kind of on the back burner just to try and be able to support the grassroots coaches and whatnot at the moment?
I think we've decided that we're going to utilise Zoom video call and try and, once this all gets set up and we're all out working, probably in the new year, when our diaries are full, hopefully, we'll certainly, we'll look to have fortnightly, monthly Zoom meetings just to standardise what we're doing, standardise work. We need to ensure that as many of us are current tutors too when things get up and running again, so that the messages we're sending to grassroots coaches align with those they're getting on course. That's so important. Hence the title of the program, passNsupport. It's so important that myself and others are still educating these in terms of their qualifications. Otherwise, the FA could go that way and passNsupport could go that way, and that's no good for anyone.
So the idea would be that you'll always keep an eye on what is being delivered on those courses, be it on Zoom and stuff, and then kind of cater your product to be able to help people through that process.
Yeah, 100%. We're not. Listen, we're not. It's not an anti-FA program, this at all. I'm fully behind what the FA are doing, and I think the FA's coach education program is fantastic. I've lived and breathed it for 5 years, and I want to continue being a part of it. So we're simply a resource that hopefully coaches and clubs will choose to lean on.
I think one of the big things that everyone said is I've heard everyone say there's only so much Zoom you can do.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you linking back to what you said at the start, people want to be able to get out onto the grass, and people want to be able to take the things that they've learned on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Zoom calls, webinars, whatever it is, and try and construct their practice designs in a way where they can impart the wisdom to the kids in a useful way, not in just a knowledge drop. So I guess part of your thing is to be on the grass with them, the bit that's probably that final bit of the jigsaw. Once you've got all this information, actually just supporting them when they're there, when they're with the players, all that type of stuff.
100%. When the FA brought out the in situ support model, I don't mind telling you, it was a logistical nightmare. I mean, it really was, to try and get everyone coaches on the same night. Good people who are tutoring, they're good, so they've got other commitments. So to try and marry up everything was a logistical nightmare. However, the value of those visits, and learners have said it, just a couple of snippets of information from an experienced tutor or coach developer, it's worth its weight in gold. And we've had feedback around in situ support, which in effect is what we're looking to continue, isn't it? In this face-to-face support.
No, it sounds like a really exciting project, and obviously it'll be something to keep an eye on. And I'm sure on our social media stuff, if anything pops up, I'll send it out, because I think the support that you guys can give is invaluable. And I think those grassroots level coaches, they want to do what's best for their kids and what their friends' kids and all that type of stuff. So any support in doing that is going to be invaluable to them.
Yeah. No, and listen, those, for people that know us as a team of tutors and know the people involved, you have to look at who's involved. We'll go over and above. Of course, we have to charge. It's a business. It's a company. We'll go over and above. It won't be. It'll be a business transaction, but the support we'll give to these coaches and clubs will go far and over and above what we say we'll do. Love it.
So I guess kind of winding down towards the end, a few times you've mentioned how you've been over coaching roles within academies or that type of stuff. So we've discussed a lot about your coach developer role and your role as a parent, if you like, which I guess in there, I guess this links back to the degree you're also a coach. You also go and coach. So what does that journey look like for you, and what are some of the key takeaways you've had in those coaching roles? I know most recently you obviously did a little bit alongside at Bath University with the girls. A couple of times last year. Kind of what's that process look like?
Yeah,
What
the journey goes back a long way. So I played as I wasn't a bad young player. Never had the drive or probably ability or anything to be a professional footballer. I love my football. I was fortunate enough. When I was 17, in the middle of A levels, I did some coaching for a big company called passSupport. Now, back then, it was passSupport was Paul Ashworth's soccer school. Now, you might recognise the surname there. Paul was Dan Ashworth's brother. So the Ashworths have been a big influence on me, huge influence on me. So anyway, I did some coaching in the summer holidays. Probably the best 6 weeks of my life I spent across the South Coast, coaching for passSupport fun weeks. Lewis, New Haven, I've got my map here actually, Isle of Wight, Eastbourne, Hastings. And I thought, I want to do this. My head coach, would you believe, was Paul Warne. So I'm name dropping now. He's now the Rotherham manager. And he taught me a lot about coaching. And it was the best 6 weeks of my life. And I thought, I want to do this. So an opportunity arose during my final A-level year to buy a franchise in passSupport. So I flunked my A-levels, much to the displeasure of my parents, and took a £5,000 loan out and bought a van and got out there and worked in schools, organised fun weeks, fun days, after school clubs, etc. And that was when it was all quite new. Things like this, they exist now, but it was quite new in those days because a little bit older. I then linked up with Peterborough United, where Paul Ashworth was, and Dan Ashworth, and Luke Hobbs, and some really good, Mark Trace, some really good coaching people who've gone on to some big things. Don Morling, who's now at Brighton, Eddie Boothroyd was there. So it's a good team of coaches. I learned a lot off those. I was the under-9s manager. I then moved to Cambridge City and ran their youth development programme. And then Cambridge United, now down the road, got relegated. Their youth system was scrapped, so we shifted our programme over to Cambridge United, and then produced quite a few players, to be fair, who are still playing in the league now. I then took a bit of a break from football and went into teaching. So I taught at a further education college. And what I found there is that those two experiences, the coaching and then the teaching, I kind of fell in a little bit to coach education. You marry the two up. I went on my B licence with Nigel Quincy at Hartbury College 13 years ago, and he inspired me to become a coach educator. So I've tried to coach. I've been in Bristol Rovers and Bristol City Academy since moving down here, and I try and stay current. So the reason I was at Bath Uni, one of the reasons, was because the only gap in my diary was 7:30 in the morning, 2 mornings a week. I just literally had no other time. But I think it's so important to keep current. I really do. So hopefully I'll get to work with the girls again, just so I can keep current and keep, if I'm going to spout forth in front of a classroom of people or support coaches, I need to be current, I think. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's a whistle-stop tour of my coaching journey. There are a few other bits in between, but they were the main bits.
Why do you think it's so important to stay current and up to date?
I guess to try things, and working with a female team, I'll be honest with you, it was still is a massive learning curve for me. Learned so much. So that was probably the only. I've worked grassroots. I've worked in schools. I've worked in academies. I've worked for colleges. It was probably the area I thought I need to learn about this, because we're getting learners on course who work in the female game. I need to know this. So that was important for me. But I think it's important to be current, and I enjoy it. I think it's like it's being a teacher, isn't it? Teachers, the more they progress over the years, they end up being ahead and then don't teach. You see that a lot, don't you? And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the coach educator who doesn't coach. So, I try and keep current if I can.
I guess one of the benefits as well is you get to learn about each generation as well. Imagine if you look over your coaching career, each generation's different in terms of the way that they act, the way that the pressures they have. Like 20 years ago, we had no social media. Now everyone's on social media. So I guess for you, that's quite being able to stay engaged. You are able to relate your coach education head to going, oh, actually, this is what ground zero looks like.
Yeah, great point, because society has changed, players have changed, youngsters have changed massively, whether we like it or not. And I think back to when I first started coaching, and maybe how I spoke to the children now. I think, God, but then that's how you did. You would tell kids off, then you could an old-fashioned telling off, and yeah, you've got to treat people differently now. And so I've had to move with the times, as we all have. So I think it's a great point. Yeah, knowing youngsters now.
And how important do you think your foundation of working in schools or working in those holiday and soccer camps has been for your career moving forward?
Massive, absolutely massive. I think I'm going to sound old now and grumpy, but I do think that, I look at my own pathway, and it was different back then. I took my prelim, I was 18. I took my Uefa B, was 21, but failed it. Then only felt confident enough to retake it 9 years later. My A license 4 or 5 years ago. So it took me a long time. Within that time, I must have clocked up thousands of hours of practice in schools, in development centres, different types of different ages, different motivations, learned so much. And I think sometimes young people come on course, whiz through the qualifications, don't really do their apprenticeship. Fine, it's the way of the world. I don't think they're a better coach for it. I think you only really learn from getting things wrong, working with players, trying stuff, reflecting. And that takes years to become I'm not saying I'm an outstanding coach by any means, but it takes years to gain that experience, I think.
Do you have concerns about coaches that just go straight into like performance or elite things rather than having that grounding at the grassroots? Or
I don't have concerns, but I think for their own development it would help them. But I don't have concerns. I think it's the way of the world now. I think then that, if that's the way they want to go, that's absolutely fine. I think they would find it hard to drop down into grassroots football, but it might be something they don't want to do. But no, not concerns. The world's changing.
Cool. So listen, I'm gonna let you go because I appreciate you've been on the call for a little while.
Hungry.
But, I've got one last question, which is something I asked to everyone, which is who's the best player you've either played with or against, or worked with or against, and why? And then who's the best coach, or in your case, coach developer you've worked with or against? Again, why and why?
Blimey. Right. I think the best player I've worked with is potentially, I say potentially, young Lloyd Kelly, who's at Bournemouth now. And I say that because I believe he'll play for England. The game comes easy to him. He's an absolute Rolls Royce, and providing he can stay injury free, I think he'll go on to be the best player I've worked with. He's also a fabulous man, really, really good guy, and he's my son's hero. And he's got posters up here, even though he's left Bristol City, he's still his hero. But I think if you were to ask me that question in 3-4 years' time, it'll be him. Yeah. Best coach educator, I have to say, my mentor Nigel Quincy, still going strong. I won't tell you how old he is, but he's just got so much knowledge and experience and a way of getting things across. And he keeps current as well. That's the thing. He's delivered every qualification over the years, but he keeps current. And his advice and influence has been just been irreplaceable for me. It's been fantastic. So yeah, those two, I think, answer your question.
Perfect. Listen, Steve, I really appreciate your time, and good luck with the obviously new.
Thanks, Michael.
And whatnot. And I'm sure from the conversation we've had there, a lot of people will see how invaluable kind of your support and stuff will be. So yeah, thank you for your time. And
thanks for inviting me on. I really enjoyed chatting to you.
Cheers. Speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.